The Obama re-election campaign won a huge victory this week when the United States Supreme Court ruled against Republican efforts to end early voting in Ohio for the 3 days prior to the election. In 2008, more than 100,000 voters in Ohio cast their ballots during those 3 days. Almost immediately after the Supreme Court ruled that early voting must continue, Ohio's Republican Secretary of State, John Husted, issued a directive ordering polling places to open, but with much more limited hours. On Saturday, November 3rd, the polls will open at 8 a.m. and be forced to close at 2 p.m. On Sunday, November 4th, the polls will be open from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. On Monday, November 5th, the day before Election Day, the polls will open at 8 a.m. and be forced to close at 2 p.m. Joy Reid, just when you think you've got them, the Supreme Court's got them. This.
Yeah, John Husted, this is basically an in-your-face to the Supreme Court saying, okay, you can make me keep them open, but I'm going to cut those hours by 8 hours versus 2008. And let me tell you what's so insidious about this. Early voting appeals to younger voters, African-American voters, people who have less time in the workplace so they can't get the day off. 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Who can vote from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. on a weekday? And why is this so important? Because, Lawrence, in states like Florida and Ohio, where do you vote when you vote early? Not in your precinct. You go to the elections office. It's easier for people. They don't have to know their precinct. So they know that appeals to Democrats, younger, minorities. It's sort of an end around the Supreme Court, and it's pretty nasty. And I think it has to be classed as voter suppression. And
it's clearly tired. These are all Republicans trying to stop a Democratic vote. What should the Democratic turnout machine do in reaction to this in Ohio?
Well, I can tell you what they're going to do. They're cranking up the vote even more.
Tell me what they're going to do.
Yeah, they're absolutely. And I've spoken to Democrats about this. I've spoken to Obama campaign people. They plan to flood those polls with people in the lines and dare John Husted to shut down those polls with people standing in line. In 2008, the hours there were 2.5-hour long lines of people waiting to vote, and they had 8 more hours. And they understand that 145,000 some odd votes were cast in those last 3 days. They are worried because Ohio is a must-win for Mitt Romney. They want to shut that down as much as possible. But I can tell you, Democrats are ready for it. They plan to get people into those lines and give them their opportunity to vote.
It was Ohio that gave us a second George W. Bush term, a flip of 60,000 votes, as we keep saying, would have changed it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ken Blackwell, the previous Secretary of State, had the same reputation for just naked partisanship. On top of that, you've had 10 state senators write to Husted because there are these groups called True the Vote. They're these Tea Party-affiliated, barely separated from the Republican Party groups that also want to send poll watchers. They want to send 1 million poll watchers out to take pictures of you while you vote, to harass people while they vote. This is straight voter suppression, and it has to be stopped. But Democrats are ready for it.
Joy Reid, the last words. Voter suppression senior correspondent gets tonight's last word.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joy.